Today, we take a step back and look at the year that was. A year of challenge, a year of change, and a year of unmistakable movement across rural Saskatchewan. And to do so, we are joined by the president of the SARM, Bill Huber, to reflect on a defining year for rural municipalities and the leaders who serve them. 2025 was a year where rural issues pushed firmly into the provincial spotlight. From the halls of the annual SARM Convention in March, where more than 2,000 delegates gathered to wrestle with everything from global trade tensions to the state of rural healthcare in the province, to the long summer days of division meetings that saw SARM leadership travel more than 2,200 kilometers to hear directly from municipalities. It was a year rooted in engagement and action. But it was also a year of major announcements. The provincial budget delivered a record-setting municipal revenue sharing package, over $361 million, giving rural municipalities a little more breathing room in the face of rising costs. And more than $30 million in infrastructure funding targeted the roads, the bridges, and the culverts that keep Saskatchewan's economy moving. But the story of 2025 wasn't just about dollars and policy documents. It was about real concerns. Abandoned buildings and derelict properties becoming safety hazards, an overstretched healthcare system in struggling to reach those more remote corners of the province of Saskatchewan, and persistent pressures on producers, from invasive pests to international tariffs, is weighing heavily on rural livelihoods. Through it all, SARM continued to push forward, calling for support, amplifying local voices, and navigating the balance between environmental regulations, economic realities, and community well-being. So, we're taking a closer look. What did 2025 mean for rural Saskatchewan? What progress was made? And what remains unfinished as we head into 2026? SARM President Bill Huber joins us to break that all down, so stay with us as Municipal Affairs starts after this break.
You stepped up to serve your community. Now take your leadership to the next level. Introducing GEMS, Governance Essentials for the Municipal Sector, a practical, Saskatchewan-based training program designed for council members and those who support them. Whether newly elected or a seasoned leader, GEMS helps sharpen the skills that matter most: decision-making, accountability, financial stewardship, infrastructure oversight, and navigating the complex realities of municipal governance. This isn't your typical classroom. GEMS is flexible, online, and built for busy people. You don't need a university degree, just a commitment to good governance. For some, it's been years since taking a course. That's okay. GEMS is designed to build confidence and knowledge. There is a short assessment, but it's there to reinforce your learning, not to trip you up. If cost is a concern, talk to your administrator, as there may be grants available to offset some of the costs. Because when local leaders grow, entire communities benefit. GEMS, because good governance isn't just important, it's essential.
President, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about the year that was 2025 and the upcoming year of 2026. As we always do in the year in review, let's start by looking back over the last 12 months. From your perspective as president of the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities, what stands out to you as the most defining moment or achievement SARM accomplished this year?
Well, I think the thing that we've accomplished and look forward to working on in the future is our work in collaboration with the provincial and federal governments. Not only just the provincial government in Saskatchewan, but also a new change in Ottawa. You know, it's still there's still a lot of roadblocks and hurdles to overcome, but our lobby trip this year to Ottawa, the last or second last week of October, I think was as good a one as we've had in many years.
Looking at the big picture provincially, and I want to start with the big announcement that came at the budget this year, if you don't mind. The province, through Minister Ryder, Minister of Finance, announced a record $361.8 million in municipal revenue sharing this year. How does that impact rural municipalities as we are seeing more and more communities struggle with their financial viability?
Well, it was welcome news. We're glad to hear that revenue sharing is there and will continue on. That's something that this government has supported and contribute to for many years. And sometimes we think it's great. You see a little increase, but you always want more. But there's always optimism there. And one thing I was really appreciated of this past year was in early October. Well, it was late September. We had a call from Ministry of Government Relations, the Honorable Eric Schmaltz, and invited me personally and a staff member to travel to Ottawa with him and 7 mayors and a couple SUMA representatives on an infrastructure lobby trip. And, we were very fortunate to have that opportunity to go, and it worked out very well. And we had a good collaboration with urban counterparts, and I was the only rural rep there. But and when we're looking for funding for under new programs and the new infrastructure funding program that the federal government announced here, just month or two ago, $51 billion over 10 years. You think sometimes, well, how is that going to affect rural Saskatchewan? And I have my wonders, concerns, and questions. But I attended a meeting yesterday, and it's going to take me a while and our rural members to get their thoughts and heads around it. But when you start working with towns and villages that struggle, as rural municipalities do too for infrastructure funding, it can all tie together. And we might not, see it instantly where this money is there to build a new road or fix a bridge in a certain municipality. But it's a 10-year commitment over this 51 billion over 10 years. But there's certain things that are so important to rural Saskatchewan and urban communities, like swimming pools, skating rinks, recreation centers, even hospitals and infrastructure for industry, for new builds, whether it's canola crush plants or pea processing plants east of Regina here. So all those things. And I think that was maybe the highlight of the whole year, not just because of the friendships we made, but also the relationship that we formed with the Ministry of Government Relations, because they look after a whole broad spectrum of things. It's not just what happens in municipalities, it's what happens all across the province, day to day.
I just want to pick up on that infrastructure topic for a second, if you don't mind, because and you and I've chatted a few times in 2025, so I'm going to try and put words in your mouth a little bit, but you're going to correct me at the end of it once I'm finished my question. Rural Saskatchewan has what Canada needs. It has the resources, it has the food, it has the processing, it has the area that Canada needs when we look at this whole approach of build Canada strong. We need to start building internally and then supplying our own local sources first before we start selling it to other people and then buying it back. What steps need to happen in 2026 to ensure that rural Saskatchewan becomes that powerhouse that you and I both know it can be around grain, around canola, around the critical minerals, the uranium, as we're talking more and more about nuclear? What infrastructure challenges and investments does the federal and provincial government need to do in 2026 to make rural Saskatchewan the beacon that it can be?
Well, one thing we have to, and I'll just reflect back a little bit to what our government of the day in Saskatchewan has done. And, I listened to the Premier speak on Tuesday at a luncheon here in Regina that was hosted by the Chamber of Commerce. And, we talk about trade and what Saskatchewan has. We've got so many things here, from agriculture, commodity products to oil and gas, and potash and rare earth minerals. So much is right here in this great province. And I got to commend the government in the last number of years, the provincial government, for, reaching out to other countries. We're now trading with, I think it's 160 or 161 different countries around the world. And, we got to recognize that the United States is our biggest and our closest trading partner. We don't want to ever erode that relationship, even though we've got a leader in the U.S. right now, President Trump, who's sometimes difficult to understand, difficult to work with. But we can't push these buttons too much. But we've also got to remember that they've reached out to other countries, to secure markets in case of things like tariffs. And then China is our second largest country, a trading partner, and especially for canola seed, peas, pork, some of those agriculture products that are so valuable to them and also to our producers in this province. And then, of course, India. And we're so fortunate in Saskatchewan to have people that are entrepreneurs, that are forward thinking and in business. And I'll use Murad Al-Khatib as an example for what he's done for the pulse industry in this province in the last number of years. And it's only going to get better as time goes on. And we need infrastructure funding for water and sewer infrastructure on the east side of the city of Regina to help industries like that grow and expand. So those are things that are really important to our economy. And we're so fortunate to have a cabinet that the Premier has picked after the last provincial election over a year ago now. But I think, in my mind, and dealing with probably 8 different ministries, have a good working relationship with not only SARM, but with other industry leaders and ag groups and different organizations throughout this province. So we're in a pretty good place, even though it seems like there's challenging times ahead. Inflation is sometimes really concerning, but I think there's all kinds of room for improvement, but I think we're headed on the right path. And as SARM president and for our members, I will continue to do my very, very best to work with government, whether it's in the East or right here at home.
To get our resources to market, to get our food to market, we need critical infrastructure and improved infrastructure. This year, the provincial government, which I know you were a bit happy about because you and I chatted about it at the budget, but SARM welcomed more than $34 million in the RIG funding for roads, bridges, and culverts this year. What impact will that have on rural Saskatchewan who are dealing with road issues, culvert issues, or even bridge issues? Because I've seen the price tag for a new bridge and a new culvert, and they are not as cheap as they once were, Bill.
No, they certainly aren't. And it's not all just because of price of materials going up. It's because of cost of labor also rising, fuel costs. But we welcome that RIG program. It's a program the Ministry of Highways offers to us to manage, and we've got over 1,200 bridges. And we met with the Minister of Highways here just a few weeks ago and had a great discussion for about an hour. And we've got some ideas that could help within municipalities that we've talked to that have 40 plus bridges in their RMs. But there's also some things that our municipalities, along with cooperation from the Ministry of Highways, are working on, to going to large diameter culverts, to box culverts, and getting rid of some of these bridges. And there's actually some advantage to that too, not only in the cost saving part of it, but it makes better access for wider equipment and farm machinery that travel up and down some of these roads just on short distances in the municipalities to get to one area of their farming operation to another. So those are things that are challenging, but we still need those roads. We still need big improvements in the rail system. We need big improvements in our port facilities, not only in Vancouver, but Rupert, and also Hudson Bay, which is something that's really getting the lights turned on in that community up there. And there's a lot of work being done there, and I think it's positive in a very good way.
Well, it's interesting because you and I chatted most recently at the Association of Manitoba Municipalities Convention in Winnipeg just earlier last month in November. And there I was in attendance. I think you were there as well for Premier Wabkanu's speech, where he said, we want to open up the Port of Churchill, which would bring more resources to market to Europe. That would be a big win if we started bringing resources to the Churchill port, because Saskatchewan can use that for its natural resources and its critical minerals, or even its canola, to get it to the European market, which seems to want what Canada is offering.
Yes, that's very true. And they got a really good reception from the Manitoba Premier at those Manitoba meetings, and they've got an excellent relationship. The Manitoba Municipal Association has an excellent working relationship with the Premier and also their Minister of Government Relations, who's very well received. And I think there's some pretty good cooperation there and some funding opportunities. And they work collaboratively and closely with the federal government and the federal ministers. So I think there's some real optimism there. And another one of our board members from SARM did travel to Thompson, Manitoba, 2 or 3 weeks ago to the Hudson Bay Route Association annual general meeting, where I was a guest speaker and gave a presentation there, and look forward to working with them in the future, because it's a different access to markets. You don't have to go down through the Panama Canal, and there's so many critical minerals and LNG, liquefied natural gas, and things like that can be exported. There's countries like Germany that want some of these products, and it just makes perfect sense to take it through that port of Churchill rather than off the west coast or through this on the St. Lawrence. So things that are really, could be very rewarding going forward.
I want to turn back to an issue that I know has not gone away, because I've heard about it from many of your municipal leaders when I was at the SARM Convention in Saskatchewan earlier this year, where more than 2,000 delegates gathered. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it to your fall convention, and I will be there in April or in the spring for your SARM convention in Regina. So I will making up for that broken promise that I gave to you a few weeks ago, Bill. But the one issue I'm hearing more and more about, and it was pretty prominent during that convention in the spring, was around rural health care. Now, this is not an issue that just popped up in 2025. This has been an ongoing issue. And I think Ray Orb and I, your predecessor, and I chatted about it a few times on the show as well. How would you describe the state of rural health care in the province of Saskatchewan in 2025? And on the flip side of that, I'm going to ask this question as well, and you can sort of answer both at the same time. SARM has been advocating for the return of the Grow Your Own Nurse Practitioner program.
Right.
Are you hearing any good movement on that for 2026?
Yes. Well, I'll answer the last question first, I guess, on nurse practitioners. I think they've expanded, and I hate to quote numbers that I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to use the number of approximately 20 nurse practitioners that have been recruited and in place, but are spaces for them. I don't know if those positions have all been filled. I have a daughter who's a nurse, and she keeps me somewhat informed. And there certainly is challenges, in the healthcare system, but they're not getting worse; they're getting better. And the ministry acknowledges all the issues we need. It's a little more serious in rural Saskatchewan because of placement of doctors and nurses and nurse practitioners in rural communities, because we have to have a community where there's a hospital and that's attractive for people to live and raise their families. That is an important thing to get them there, not necessarily just the shortage. So it's a broad page to look at, but I think the ministry, they certainly have their challenges, but they're working towards improvement, and we do see it. It might be slow sometimes, and critics will always pick out the bad things, but wait times are decreasing for surgeries in the province. There's certainly a shortage of beds. I realize that. But there always has been, and there's been new hospitals built and new day clinics that are built and opened, and all them things help improve the patient care, and some of the work that's been done with the Pharmacy Association over the past year is very very important. Where a pharmacist can administer some medications and drugs without having to go to a nurse practitioner or a doctor. So I see improvements and lots of room to make more, but certainly I think they're headed in the right direction.
Well, good to hear because I know access to healthcare is a top priority for every family who has a sick child right now, and we are in the flu season, as they call it. So I can imagine it's going to be a top of mind for a lot of parents across rural Saskatchewan. But I wanted to also talk about the convention because there was a big announcement that happened at the spring convention. Minister of Government Relations Eric Schmalz and Minister of Environment Travis. I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong here right now. I apologize, but
No,
Kelsing, I go
Keezy.
Keesing. I knew it was a K. I
Well,
got close, but they made an announcement at the SARM convention after SARM was advocating for the issue for some time, and it was around derelict and abandoned buildings. Now they launched a pilot program at the SARM Spring Convention in Saskatoon. It is less than a year since that announcement came about. How has the pilot project gone from SARM's perspective? And could you see it addressing more issues around rural Saskatchewan when more and more communities are looking at where their derelict buildings are?
well, I think we supported that program. It's something that it certainly has its growing pains, like anything, and but I think it's got some value to it. We've got more and more communities that are handing in the keys and turning them over to government relations, and government relations, according through legislation, they can become the responsibility of the municipalities. So, and we're trying to work through a lot of that stuff with with the communities in transition program, and we're having meetings in the days ahead here. But I think if we can get rid of some of these derelict buildings in these communities, it does a couple things. It saves a lot of money for some of these small towns that really haven't got it, or the municipalities, to dismantle them, take all that any hazardous materials out of these buildings. And if they can burn them, it also gives the opportunity for our local fire departments to be on site to do some training where there's an actual blaze or a fire there, where they can be there to protect a neighboring building across the street or next door on the next lot. So there's a lot of advantages to that. I haven't heard too much about the program being utilized yet, but I think as the winter months arrive and the snow cover on the ground, I think you'll see some ramping up of that program. So we support it, and I think it'll have its growing pains, as everything does. But I commend both Minister Schmaltz and Minister Kiesig on that initiative, and hopefully it works. Because sometimes there's little glitches and things, but they can be smoothed out or worked through.
Well, just on that note, and understandable why it probably wasn't implemented as much as they probably wanted to this year was because we did see in 2025 one of the biggest wildfires Saskatchewan has seen in northern Saskatchewan. So a lot of people were on heightened alert, and you don't want to be starting to burn things while there's wildfires going on. So I can imagine that it's a little double-edged sword. But so speaking about the wildfires for a second, if you don't mind, we saw Saskatchewan come together in 2025 that we have not seen in some time. We saw people welcome people into their communities, welcome people into their backyards, welcome people in that they didn't know who were Saskatchewan residents forced to evacuate from the wildfires. Looking at the way Saskatchewan responded to people in need, does that give you pride in the beautiful province that you live in?
It sure does. It really does. People came together. It was, smaller communities, whether they opened up their town halls or their hotels or abandoned, recreation facilities for accommodations for some of these people that had nowhere to go. Every hotel in cities as far south as Regina and Weyburn and Estevan had people in them, that were removed because of fires, and they had to evacuate it. And they came to these more southerly communities because possibly they had relatives or family or friends close, that could support them in some way too. But I think Saskatchewan stepped up, and it's unfortunate we had a dry summer in the north that was really, really challenging to deal with. But I want to make sure that we relay the message. I don't think those forest fires are all the fault of climate change. I really believe that they're a little more. A lot of those fires were lit intentionally or accidentally, whether it be lightning strikes or non-caring smoker going down the road with a cigarette and tossing it in the ditch, and there's fires started like that. We'll never know what the cause of each and every one was, but let's not blame it on climate change, because climate change in Saskatchewan and agriculture is sometimes a good thing. And we've had a little warming in the months of August and September, and we haven't suffered a devastating frost in this province for egg producers for 21 years now.
So don't say that too loud, Bill, because we're still not out of the frost season yet here. So let's just hold our horses on that one.
Well, I was touching wood when I said that. So.
I want to just quickly, if you don't mind, because I'm cautious of time and I know you're a busy man, I want to turn to 2026.
Yes.
Now, at the beginning of the interview, you talked about the relationship and the collaborative approach that SARM, the provincial government, and the federal government has been doing around advocacy, about talking about the issues that you need to talk about and hopefully seeing movement. What do you hope for in 2026? Sorry, in 2025 that happened, 2026. What do you hope will be that sort of guiding post that will ensure that the work that was started with this new government federally, with the return of the Scott Moe government provincially in 2024 and throughout the entire year of 2025, what do you hope for that collaborative approach to be like in 2026?
Well, I think we need to start, and I listened to the Premier speak, as I mentioned earlier, on Tuesday. And I think what we have to do is we have to be in front of these people. We have to be there more often in the year. And I think you've probably heard this, that it was 6 years or 7 years since anybody's been in China to talk with some of their trade officials there. So I commend the Premier in Saskatchewan, Premier Moe, and also the Secretary to the Prime Minister, Cody Blois, for taking the time and the effort to go to China on our behalf as agriculture producers, and also other industries, manufacturing industry too, to try and in a collaborative way, not pushing back real hard, but to work with them together to see if we can get them tariffs removed on electric vehicles and get trade somewhat normalized again. And I feel optimistic that will happen. But we may, I'm certainly open to helping in any way, and so is our board and our staff here. We can work with the provincial government and the federal government and have more of them meetings where we can keep, pounding that message home. So, and like I said earlier, we got a great relationship with 8 or 9 of the ministries we work with here in Saskatchewan. And I was really optimistic after we had a meeting with Cody Blois in Ottawa, and also our new federal ag minister, the Honorable Heath MacDonald, who's he's a Prince Edward Islander. We won't hold that against him, because there's some of the best people in Canada live and reside in Prince Edward Island. And he's willing to learn. I've had the opportunity to spend a whole afternoon with him, thanks to our Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Daryl Harrison. And I think we can get that relationship, working together. Let's leave politics out of it, and our lack of cooperation with the former federal government, our former prime minister, I guess I'll say, who didn't really recognize the importance of Saskatchewan, and we were neglected. And I think that the realization now from this government is that Saskatchewan is something that they need. What we have here, our people, our products that we export, are very valuable to not only Canada's GDP, but to help secure food security around the world.
In 2025, SARM directors traveled more than 2,200 kilometers across the province of Saskatchewan, meeting with your rural municipal leaders. Now, I can imagine that is going to happen again in 2026, and you're going to be meeting more and more with your municipal leaders. But 2026 is also an important year for your members as well, because the other half of your municipal leaders that did not go to an election in 2024 are heading to their elections in 2026. Yes. So as you look at the 2026 calendar, are you excited to hear from more of your members and talk to members one-on-one about the issues that are important to them?
Yes. And you talked about the 2,200 kilometers. Well, I think you're referring to our June division meetings that we travel to all 6 divisions. We've done that this past year. In the past, Division 5 wasn't really wanting a division meeting, so we didn't have one. But this year we went to all 6 divisions, and it's a lot of driving, but we go up and down them roads, and You know what? The highways aren't too bad either, the ones we travel. You know, we do pick some of the better ones, I guess, but we've seen some big improvements in the highway network in this province. So we have a lot of good conversation in the vehicles that we drive in, and we talk about a lot of things. And when we get to these division meetings, we talk to a lot of ratepayers and farmers that are councillors and reeves. And those are the people that give up their time to be elected officials, to represent their municipalities and to represent their communities in a better way. That, you know, being a councillor or a reeve or administrator in rural Saskatchewan, you know, it's almost a volunteer position. Nobody gets rich at it. Nobody lines their pockets with cash. And we got to commend each and every one of them individuals for what they do.
So my final question, Bill and President Huber, I apologize, and it's an important one because we look at 2026, and while the work that is going to continue, from SARM's perspective, are there top priorities that SARM will be focusing on in 2026? Or, as it is the voice of rural Saskatchewan, will you be taking your marching orders and your directions from the members who make up SARM, whether that be the RM councillors or the RM reeves? What are the top priorities that you see SARM will be focusing on in 2026?
Well, right now we're you know, just coming up to Christmas, so excuse me, we are going to have a little bit of a break here, not only for our board. We don't have any meetings next week or the week of Christmas. So we will be taking a little bit of a break there. But come the new year, we start off in January with the RDAR meetings, that's the Regina District meetings in Regina. And then we're gearing up for the convention. So once we get to the convention, we will have several resolutions, probably 15 to 30, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then we submit those resolutions, the ones that are carried. And then we wait for responses and see where we need to go and some of the things we have to push on. But agriculture is a big part of the SARM. You know, we are mandated by legislation to represent agriculture, and we do. So we've been dealing with our provincial minister of agriculture and his staff in the last months on changes to business risk management programs. And this can't come just from the province. It has to come from the feds too, because it's a cost shared thing. So we have to have cooperation from other provinces that are part of that those business risk management programs. But we need to see some changes that react quicker to devastating needs like drought and you know, wildfires that don't affect agriculture that much. But we need some big improvements there. So we're working with the provincial government and the ministry here to see where we can go on some of those things and crop insurance. We also need to, we meet regularly with the Minister of Policing and Justice, Minister McLeod. And, you know, we're happy to see some changes to bail reform, but we need more. So we're going to keep pushing for that. We're going to push for more RCMP members. We're big supporters of the RCMP, even though we support the Marshals Service under the leadership of Rob Cameron. I think they play a vital role where they're situated, and they're going to grow their policing force. So those are big things. Of course, we talked about healthcare. We're going to continue. We have quarterly meetings with the Ministry of Health, both rural and remote. We're having a meeting here, you know, early January with those people and address some of our concerns, what we hear from our members, especially in you know, the smaller towns and cities that have hospitals that are understaffed, where they need emergency care units open 24/7. So we're going to be working on stuff like that. And so it's agriculture, health, policing, you know, infrastructure are our big wishes and our asks. And but you know what? If we've got a municipality out there that has a challenge and we can help them in a professional way, we're there. We're just a phone call away or an email away. And that's my role as president, to work for our rural members, because we have 296 municipalities. Each and every one of them are a member, and we're proud of that. And we want to keep that, and we want to be supportive of them. We can't be everything to everybody all the time, but we'll certainly can try to do our very, very best. And we got a staff and a board that are supporting me 100% on doing those things.
You certainly do have a great staff and a great board that are behind you and who are working for working for the people of rural Saskatchewan. President Huber, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. The last 12 months have been fun talking to you about the issues that are going on in rural Saskatchewan. I look forward to 2026 and continuing our great conversations and talking more about what's going on in rural Saskatchewan. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being part of the show in 2025. And I look forward to seeing you again in 2026.
Well, thank you, Chris. And it's always, I'm always got a smile on my face when I hear Amy or somebody say, Chris wants, excuse me, Chris wants an interview with you. So I look forward to them too. I think they're open, honest discussions that we have on the one-to-one. So I wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and all the best in the new year, and look forward to seeing you, if not before our annual convention in March, but certainly there.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of municipal politics in the province of Saskatchewan in the year 2025. Now, your support over the last 12 months has been invaluable. So thank you so much for tuning in and staying informed about the issues that are going on municipally. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.